Welcome to Field 302, Study Session 1, The Nature of Philosophical Writing and Research. Introduction. Reading, writing, and research are integral parts of the pursuit of knowledge in any field of study or inquiry, since the knowledge claimed, sought, and defended in such fields of inquiry are fundamentally dependent on the manner in which we engage in these activities. With particular reference to research and writing, the particular field of inquiry determines how research is carried out and how writing is done. This accounts for the variations in the techniques and patterns of research and writing in the sciences, the social sciences, and the humanities. In the present chapter, it is fitting to begin the series of lectures with understanding the nature of philosophical writing and research, its types and fundamental objectives. In achieving these objectives, attention is paid to the meaning of philosophy and how such meaning determines research and writing within the field of study. Objective. The objective of this study session include to understand the meaning of philosophy, to understand the nature of philosophical writing and research, to examine the types of philosophical writing, analytic and argumentative, to understand some primary objectives of writing and researching in philosophy. Meaning of philosophical writing. Philosophy is itself a difficult concept to define. Many introductory texts in philosophy affirm that there are no consensus among philosophers themselves on what exactly philosophy means. However, the history of thought shows that philosophers are always concerned with or motivated by life's fundamental questions, or what is sometimes referred to as the big questions, such as how should we live? Is there free will? How do we know anything? What is real, or what is truth? Why philosophers do not agree among themselves on either the range of proper philosophical questions or the proper methods of answering them. They do agree that merely expressing one's personal opinion on controversial topics like these is not doing philosophy. Rather, philosophers insist on first attaining clarity about the exact question being asked and then providing answers supported by clear and logical structured arguments. Such well-structured and logically structured arguments are meant to primarily analyze and critique such fundamental questions and the ideas we live by in every facet of our existence. Philosophy is thus a critical and rational activity concerned with the most fundamental questions of human existence and an analysis of usually taken for granted worldviews, beliefs, knowledge, claims, and ideas about human existence. Hence, core philosophical activity is summed up in three questions. What is real? That is, the metaphysical and ontological concern. How do we know? The epistemological concern. What is the moral right? The axiological / moral concern. From the foregoing, an inquiry or research in philosophy is a form of questioning, often revolving around the nature of reality, knowledge, and value. This notion of inquiry is the beginning of doing philosophy, that is, rationale of inquiry into the nature of things. Hence, carrying out research or writing an essay in philosophy is quite an uneasy task, as the questions dealt with by philosophers is often difficult to answer requiring a careful and rigorous analytical process for any answer to make sense. Even the most logically structured answers are not foolproof or without lapses. It is thus important that an ideal philosophical write-up leads the reader in undeniable logical steps from obviously true premises to an unobvious conclusion. While arguing about these questions may appear silly or pointless to many, the satisfaction of philosophy are often derived from, first, discovering and explicating how they are logically connected, and second, constructing and defending philosophical arguments to answer them in turn. In short, good philosophy proceeds with modest, careful, and clear steps. It is necessary to note here that the philosopher employs the skills of good writing to achieve the above in most cases. As such, research and writing in philosophy involves understanding the basic philosophical questions that drive a particular research or write-up, applying the needed philosophical tools and methods of criticism and analysis, and ensuring coherency, clarity, and aptness in a philosophical essay. Also, philosophical writing involves making a claim and providing support or evidence for it. The strength of a write-up in philosophy depends largely on the strength of the evidence and the strength of the relationship of the evidence to any conclusion arrived at. The evidence that is used has to be more than just opinion or some other unsupported claim. Any claim not supported by good reason quickly stiffens discussion in philosophy. Types of philosophical writing. There are two major ways of clarifying the forms of philosophical research writing. Philosophical writing and research can be categorized in specific or broad terms. In specific terms, philosophical writing and research include researching and writing, summaries or reviews, assertive essays, affirmative essays, refutations, dialogues, and research essays. In broad terms, philosophical writing and research in any of these specific forms can be classified as either analytic or argumentative. A summary is a short piece of writing about another piece of writing. Its purpose is to condense a long piece of writing into a concise summation of its meaning. A summary is a concise statement of the main points in a philosophical work. It leaves out all the extraneous materials that do not advance the argument, organizes the information for clarity, and paraphrases the language used by the author. Where the original work may have been wandering, thick, or abstruse, the summary is clear and direct to the point. It reports, with or without critical assessment, the claim advanced in the work and the reason that back it up. A summary must therefore accurately represent the original work, clearly state the essential content of the argument, make the form of argument clear, and omit all extraneous materials. An assertion essay conveys an author's beliefs. It provides a format for expressing the writer's views and showing how such views are uniquely his or hers. The purpose of an assertion essay is to convey one's beliefs in a way that shows how one's thinking extends from one's identity. To effectively convey what a writer thinks of others, he or she must make an effort to help the reader understand the meaning of his or her belief statement. A belief system does little to convey one's thought unless it is clearly stated. This will involve analysis of the main words used to state the belief and perhaps also include the use of examples to show how the belief may be applied in reality. It is also important for the writer to provide the reasons for a belief in a coherent and logical manner. Explaining the support and evidence for a belief statement shows readers that the statement fits into a system of beliefs and that it is not an arbitrary or isolated thought, but is connected with the writer's overall thinking. It is also important that in an assertive essay, the writer is able to draw out some consequences of his or her views. An affirmative essay is a format for writing about another author's ideas. Philosophy is often pictured as a process of disagreement and refutation. Yet, in some cases, philosophizing involves agreeing with the views of a particular author. Your points of agreement with an author can make an excellent basis for developing an essay, either to further such points or provide practical examples that reiterate the views. The purpose of an affirmative essay is therefore for a person to work with another author's point or idea that you have some agreement with, explain that idea, explain the author's reasoning, provide your reason for agreement, and describe the significance of this point to human thoughts and existence. It is very difficult to write about another person's work as a whole, especially with the complex work of great philosophers. It helps to start with a distinct point taken from the author's book. The point chosen might be directly stated by the author, or it might be unstated but implied. Either way, the primary task is to provide an interpretation of what the author says in order to show how one gets that point from it. Essays of refutation are the direct opposite of affirmative essays. It is simply a process of discrediting an author's viewpoint by employing coherent and logical counter-arguments, evidences, and proofs. The primary aims of refutation is to show that a person is false, implausible, or not logically coherent. Dialogue has been one of the great themes of philosophical writings since the classical Greeks. In fact, Plato's dialogues are still the most sophisticated representative of the theme. Still, dialogues by Berkeley, Hume, and other philosophers are of considerable philosophical interest and literature value because they require a great grasp of the philosophical position involved, excellent reasoning skills, psychological insights, and literary ability. Dialogues are one of the most difficult writing in philosophy. A dialogue is usually a conversation between two or more persons involving different philosophical views, mostly on a subject matter. A dialogue allows a dramatic representation of the strengths and weaknesses of a philosophical position to be revealed in the course of a conversation between persons holding those views. In Plato's dialogues, there is often an attempt to show someone that they do not know what they think they know. Such dialogues often end in aporia or puzzlement. Other Platonic dialogues have the function of stating positive philosophical things in the face of opposition. For example, in the Gorgia, Plato defends the radical moral thesis that it is better to suffer injustice than to do it, against the sophists and politicians who utterly reject this doctrine. Occasionally, philosophers will write dialogues between abstractions, say a dialogue between faith, reason, and truth. But these much less frequent than dialogues between people. A research paper is often the most extensive and important project in a philosophy class. It often involves the use and effective synthesis of many of the skills. A research essay typically requires that you locate and examine information from many sources, almost always involving library research and at times the use of World Wide Web or conversation with reliable authorities. Typically, a paper of this kind will require that you find a problem and thesis, give an exposition of materials relevant to stating and resolving the problem, and make a statement of the resolution of the problem or the conclusion. These may require giving and analyzing arguments, explanations, and so forth, as well as providing criteria for evaluating the adequacy of competing positions. It will almost always require that the research be conducted in an appropriate way. These forms of philosophical writing discussed above can be categorized under two broad headings: analytic essays and argumentative essays. An analytic essay is one in which the writer restates in his or her words the argument, that is, the line of reasoning, from premises to conclusion of a work, passage, or essay of philosophy. In so doing, the writer shows that he or she understands the structure of the argument. Analytic essays include reviews, summaries, and in some cases, affirmative essays. An argumentative essay, on the other hand, is one in which the writer aims to convince the reader of the truth of an opinion or position. Usually, this will require analyzing arguments for others, competing opinion or positions, and demonstrating that they are weaker than the arguments for one's position. Those argumentative essays include philosophical analysis, whereas analytic essays are not necessarily argumentative. Refutation, dialogues, and affirmative essays can be classified under argumentative essays. In fact, both broad categorizations are interwoven to the extent that one cannot always be separated from the other. For instance, research essays essentially involve both analysis and argumentations. Some fundamental objectives of philosophical writing. 1. Analysis. By analyzing, it implies the reduction of complex ideas or explications of human situations into understandable relational concepts. Through analysis, essential concepts are extracted from experience so that they may be more easily understood and debated. According to A.P. Martinici, analysis is analogous to definition. Definitions are explicitly about giving the meaning of words. Analyses are explicitly about giving the necessary and sufficient conditions for concept. Since words express concepts, definitions are the linguistic counterpart of analysis. Every analysis, like every definition, consists of two parts: an analysandum and an analysans. The analysandum is the notion that needs to be explained and clarified because there is something about it that is not understood. The analysans is a part of the analysis that explains and clarifies the analysandum, either by breaking it down into pieces or by specifying its relations to other notions. An analysis tries to specify in its analysans necessary and sufficient conditions for the concept expressed in the analysandum. Necessary conditions are those that the analysan must contain in order to avoid being too weak, while sufficient conditions are those that are enough to guarantee that the concept of the analysis is satisfied. Analysis can be defective for three reasons: if it is circular, too strong, or too weak. An analysis is circular if the analysandum or its key terms occurs in the analysans. It is too strong just in case it is possible to give an example of the notion being analyzed that does not satisfy all the conditions specified in the analysan. Conversely, an analysis is too weak just in case it is possible to describe something that satisfies all the conditions set down in the analysans, but is not an instance of the analysandum. Generally, analysis must fulfill its primary goal of understanding. As such, the idea of analysis presupposes that the object of philosophical analysis is the attainment of the understanding through a simplification of the text in question. When analysis is done without understanding and clarity, the goals are defeated. Clarity. All too often, we simply take for granted or assume that humans have common experiences that lead to commonly held understanding of what we communicate to each other. We are, after all, thrown into the same world with many already established, taking for granted ideas of what is entailed in human experience. One responsibility philosophers have is to challenge and ultimately clarify those constructs we use to make sense of the world. The constructs often taken for granted rather than clarify and truly understand, but clarity is itself a complex concept with many dimensions. However, in philosophy, the dimension that stands out most of all its precision, which involves avoiding ambiguity, vagueness, and indeterminacy. A work in philosophy should not be ambiguous, vague, or indeterminate if it must be clear. For philosophical write-up not to be ambiguous, the specific and particular sense in which words and concepts are used must stand out. A writer should not assume that the audience already knows the meaning or the sense in which he or she uses a concept. Rather, it is his or her duty to make the sense of a word or concept stand out in a work. To avoid vagueness, an author must express his or her thought clearly and coherently. A poorly expressed thought, or one that is not coherent in meaning, only blurs clarity. Also, points must be established at every family without wavering to avoid indeterminateness in writing. The ability to do these things for clarity. Criticism. Criticism means taking judgment as to value. Philosophers judge the instrumental or practical value of ideas, concepts, theories, precepts, and perceptions. And in this critical interpretive mode, they build new and other conceptual undertakings. They ask questions such as, do they work? And if not, how can we improve them? Criticisms allow a researcher or writer in philosophy to investigate and then mediate experience, and thereby formulating solutions to problems. It is also clear that in extracting conceptual constructs that drive actual patience, philosophy is very qualitative, experiential method. Criticism can be destructive or constructive, as evident in the history of philosophy. Destructive criticism is primarily aimed at rubbishing or rendering irrational and untenable a particular story, idea, belief, thought, or knowledge claims. For instance, the positivist attack on metaphysics is often than not destructive. Constructive criticism, on the other hand, seeks to identify problems in a particular theory, idea, belief, thought, or knowledge claimed by the primary goal of reconstructing it or making it better. Construction criticism is encouraged for better scholar sportsmanship, as no idea is foolproof. 4. A philosophical essay is coherent if its parts are logically ordered, consistent, and related. An integral part of the coherence is continuity. That is, the way an essay moves from one part to another towards its goal. An essay that meanders seemingly not directly to any particular situation is defective, even if each sentence is charged with great rhetorical energy. There are many ways in which coherence is achieved in essays. Sometimes one part of an essay coheres with another part. They share a subject matter. In addition to sharing a specific subject matter, sentences hang together in other ways. One of these ways is through stock phrases that mark the boundaries of large parts of the essay. The beginning, the middle, and the end. Whichever pattern one uses, a writer must strive to avoid the incoherency, because it can become the most defective factor. Consciousness. Consciousness combines brevity and content. Being concise means conveying a lot of information in a brief space. Brevity perhaps does not call for any comment. It is desirable because it physically makes fewer demands on the leader's attention and understanding. An author should realize that she is costing an audience the time it takes to read her writing. Although brevity is a good policy, it admits of exceptions. Sometimes the reading of language recognition, a wordier sentence. Also, sometimes brevity approaches turgidity. That is, it is sometimes necessary to use more rather than fewer words in order to stretch out the content of an essay and thereby making it more intelligible to your reader. Further brevity does not guarantee efficiency. It concerns only how something is said and not at all what is said. In determining the efficiency or economy of a sentence or essay, one must consider content in addition to brevity. A brief but vacuous sentence does not communicate more efficiently than a prolix but informative one. Thus, it is not in itself desirable to sacrifice content for the sake of brevity, although these might be desirable for some other reasons. To vary sentence length or to prepare the reader for some complicated explanation. Thus, brevity and content must be balanced, and that is the first of admonition to be concise. Summary. In this study session, we have examined the meaning of philosophical writing and research, its types and primary objective. Summarily, research and writing is philosophy, involves understanding the basic philosophical questions that drive a particular research or write-up, applying the needed philosophical tools and methods of criticism and analysis, and ensuring coherency, clarity, and aptness in a philosophical essay. Also, philosophical writing involves making a claim and providing support or evidence for it. We have also examined the different types of philosophical writing as well as needs to aim at coherence, consciousness, criticisms, and analysis in philosophical writing and research. Post-test. Question 1. Define philosophy. Question 2. What makes a writer or researcher philosophical? Question 3. Distinguish between analytic and argumentative essays in philosophy. 4. List and explain some primary objectives in writing and research in philosophy. 5. What is the difference between analysandum and an analysons? This is the end of study session 1. Thanks for listening.